Barcelona will be back at it on Tuesday in a friendly in Japan, which I guess I'll cover maybe begrudgingly, but La Liga is officially in the books. And while there isn't too many things to talk about, maybe we learned a thing or two, maybe we didn't. Let's find out with those 5 headlines from Barcelona's 2-1 loss to Celta de Vigo. Headline 1 is that Ter Stegen doesn't get the record he was supposed to with a clean sheet, become the all-time leader in the Liga clean sheets. But he ends the season stuck at 26, so tied for the all-time record. 1993-94, Paco Liano from Deportivo La Coruña. Those two will forever be, well, at least until maybe next season when he can try to break it again. But they are now the co-holders of that record in the Liga. However, it feels like a formality, but Ter Stegen is going to win the Zamora Trophy for the first time in his career for the most clean sheets in the league, and Robert Lewandowski is going to win that Pichichi Trophy for most goals in the Liga. So congratulations to those two to get those individual awards. But focusing back on the game, the reason why Ter Stegen saw his clean sheet record thrown away was Celta's first goal. Both these teams kind of felt like they were up to it. For Barcelona, yeah, maybe they have some players fighting for spots, but as Xavi said after the game, things have pretty much already been decided who is who for next season, and now it's all about getting that business done. They still don't know who's going to be leaving and who could be on their way. There are still a lot of question marks, sure, but I think players have an idea of where they fit in the bigger Barcelona system, whether they're staying or not. For Celta, staying is the important thing here. They were fighting against relegation, of course, so Celta's swarming, trying to press, trying to find their moments, but not leave themselves too exposed in this game, and I think that first goal encapsulates those ideas for Celta. They crowded the midfield, forced a De Jong turnover, and quickly go the other way. Gabri Veiga, who we'll talk about later. He's a good finish here for his 10th league goal. First touch got him past Alonso in the tight angle shot before Christensen could reach him. And as I said, we'll get to the 21-year-old in a minute, because that doesn't mean that Barcelona, once the clean sheet was gone, they still had their chances though. This one didn't necessarily have to be in the books. Even by that first half whistle, Barca had their chances. They just kind of flubbed them today. They had that first almost goal. Alonso from the left. Unai Nunez fails to clear. Lewandowski miss hit on the cross, falls perfectly to Kessie, but that one unfortunately was thrown out due to offside. Headline 2 is team needs. I think the only Barcelona thing that was kind of glaring from this match was the same thing that we've been seeing for the last few weeks since Barcelona did grab that Liga title, and it was all done and dusted numerically. Is that Barcelona is missing depth in their squad, and they have some team needs. Ferran Torres, this first touch, made you question his future. Eric Garcia, a number of times this game, especially when he was at the pivot before he moved back to center back, telling you and showing you that he is not a ball winner, and he is not ultimately the answer to Barcelona's pivot woes. Certainly not. Maybe he can add depth if he's still around next season to both center back and pivot, but again, you're going to be going down your depth chart before you get to Eric Garcia. It was also kind of frustrating. I feel like players have done their homework and done their tape, and they're beginning to flop against Eric Garcia in 50-50 duels, as if they know that the referees are looking for Eric Garcia or to have some issues physically going mano-a-mano, and so players are trying to take advantage of that, and fortunately, this referee didn't fall for it. The sequence that summed this game up to me was the back-to-back misses, though I know it ended 2-1, but one for Carlos Perez and one for Frank Kessie. Kessie gives it away. Perez pushes on the counter, and instead of playing in a teammate, he lets a poor shot fly. And then the other way, Lewandowski delivered to the back post. Kessie just missed the header. To me, that summed up the first half action where Celta, they looked like they were close to it before the goal, of course, but Barcelona looked like they were even closer. Xavi did try to throw some wrinkles in there, switching Ferran Torres and Rafinha about midway through that first half, and then for the second half, he switched them right back. Clearly, that wasn't working, but it does bring up the problem in those team needs, that Barcelona have too many right wingers, and the idea that they're going to add Messi back as either right interior or right winger, and they're going to jettison Ansu Fati, well, I think I'm getting ahead of myself here. Headline 3 is Celta's Jewel fights off relegation. Before I go back to Barcelona, let's head back to Celta de Vigo, because I really do think the focus here needs to be about Gabri Veiga, and not necessarily so much him, because the 21-year-old, of course, does get the brace. Poor Iñaki Peña comes on. I don't know how much more he could have done about that goal, but certainly doesn't cover himself in glory, because right when he comes on for Ter Stegen, that's when Celta de Vigo scored their second. That winds up being the game winner. He was definitely caught out by what he thought was a cross. Well, I guess it was a cross, but it goes in the back of the net. A really fortunate hit for Gabri Veiga to get his second, and more importantly for Celta de Vigo, looking to avoid relegation with this one. I want to keep saying that it was more important for them than Iñaki Peña not being able to put that or put a nice save on his reel. And why I do want to talk about Gabri Veiga here, he has a €40 million release clause, a 21-year-old attacking midfielder. He is way too expensive for Barcelona to go for that position in a need that, again, they're either going to bring Messi, which has a high interior on that right side, that's who you're going to take, or that is Pedri's spot. They have Pablo Torre there as well as a backup if they, not say truly need somebody, but Gabi can also play there. That seems like one spot on the field. Even looking at Alex Garrido, that seems like a position that they're going to trust from the academy or anybody else. Again, Messi would be another option there instead of €40 million. That's not where the positions of need certainly are in this team. Now, I think he could go to Real Madrid, yes, but I also think that might be the worst thing for his career. I don't see where Gabri Veiga would necessarily fit for Real Madrid because I don't think they're going to give him the proper run out. To me, he looks and reminds me a lot of Dani Ceballos, who had played for Real Betis before making that move to Real Madrid. And yes, he had to find himself on loan for a while. And I think for going to Real Madrid, Gabri Veiga might have to do the same thing. Again, at 21, which is even older than Dani Ceballos when he made the move originally, signing for Real Madrid, I think he would be much more suited to go to the Premier League, where he's almost guaranteed a starting spot week in and week out and playing in that league than playing for Real Madrid. And it will be sad to see as Iago Aspas is truly on his last legs. He wasn't that talismanic figure this season. They had a young, homegrown talent step into that position, had 11 goals on the season, and in helping them avoid relegation is going to have his story told in bars in Vigo for quite some time. So I would love to see him stay. He doesn't have to stay and become a legend of the club like others. Look at Iago Aspas. He tried it out. He went off and then came back home. And I would like to see Gabri Veiga do a similar thing. Maybe not flop as bad as Iago Aspas did when he went to Liverpool, but it would be cool to see a homegrown talent stay with Celta de Vigo at least next season when he's 22 years old in his second, we'll say, breakout season. But the counter-argument is that he will never be better or never be worth more to Celta de Vigo than he is at this moment. Teams are already willing to pay that €40 million release clause, and Celta de Vigo, especially from a Premier League team, might be able to get even a little more out of him. So do your business, Celta de Vigo, and maybe they can use that money to reinforce and keep themselves up next year with a little more depth throughout the squad. So that certainly is the counter-argument for why you cash in on your homegrown talent now. Headline 4 is Ansu's what if. In that second half, we saw Ansu, we saw Dembele come in off the bench, trying to get some kind of result for Barcelona. We'll talk about why the young kids didn't feature in the second here, but I do think the focus is on Ansu Fati. Because when we saw Ferran Torres and Rafinha, two players that are most comfortable on the right wing, and then Dembele, who's also not even most comfortable on the right wing, but most dangerous on the right wing. Especially with that cross in on the goal, coming on his left foot, the fact that from that right side, he can cross in with an outswinging ball with his right foot, or he can cross in from that right side with an in-swinging ball on his left. Players like Lewandowski like to start on the left and then come in. That's why their partnership, Lewandowski and Dembele's, was so good when they were both on the field. Well, that being Dembele was on the field and healthy. Lewandowski was always on the field. But even Ansu. It seems like Ansu on the left works best when Dembele is on the right because Ansu Fati, with all the attention and that defense moving over to shift their focus to Dembele, he gets a little more space in the box, just a bit, behind Lewandowski. And that's the space that he found for that goal for Barcelona today. An easy header, as I said, that cross on the left foot from Dembele. And that does make you wonder, what if Ansu Fati on that left wing, let's say Messi doesn't come, and Ansu gets a long run out as the starting left winger at Barcelona, starts on the left, Lewandowski in the middle, and Dembele on the right. In theory, that gives you the best version of Ansu Fati, and even this worst version of Ansu. His stats this season, I think it's because of expectations. I don't know what people expected of him coming back from such a dire injury, but Ansu was joint second on the team in the Liga goals this season behind Robert Lewandowski. Ansu had 7 goals in the Liga this season, and more importantly, even as a super sub, Ansu Fati, in the course of his career, is a valuable goal scorer for Barcelona. Great stat by Ansu Stats on Twitter, 21 of Ansu Fati's 29 Barca goals, 72% of them were scored within 25 minutes of him being on the pitch. Ansu is still numerically a difference maker, even after what we all called a down year. It's just that you're playing against the expectations. So I think maybe there is an argument that he goes elsewhere, figures some things out, and then comes back. But as my fear with Ansu is, that guy is too much of a star. Even at 20 years old, he is too much of a star to leave and never return. And finally, headline 5, what happens to young players? Thinking about Ansu and his trajectory, of course, when there are players on the bench. We saw Gabi come on the field as a sub as well. People are like, we want to see the other kids. We want to see the other kids. Totally understandable, but on the other side for Celta de Vigo, if you're Carlos Perez, if you're Oscar Mingueza, maybe you're whispering into those players that they saw, those 17 and 18-year-olds on the bench saying, hey, maybe the grass might be greener elsewhere, just think about it in your careers. But certainly the players that were brought along by Xavi from the U19 and U18, because Barca Athletic did wind up getting a 4-2 victory over Real Madrid Castilla. So they have one more match, a return leg against them, to figure out if they're going to move on to the next phase of the playoff. Unfortunately, with Celta winning, that means that Celta not being relegated meant that Celta de Vigo B can still find themselves in the Segunda Division, so that means that Barca Athletic will have to play another round after Real Madrid Castilla to potentially get promoted. They wouldn't get automatically promoted in the place of Celta de Vigo B after beating Real Madrid Castilla. I know that's really confusing. All you need to know is Barca Athletic have, at least with a 4-2 victory over Real Madrid Castilla in the first leg, have done their job in the promotion to get one step closer to promotion. That's all you need to know. Lamine Yamal coming off the bench for that one. He's focused on the matches, I guess, that matter, as opposed to the first team one that doesn't as much. And that's why you didn't see any Barca Athletic guys. I think it'd be a totally different story if Marc Casado, Estanis Pedrola, Chadi Riyad were just kind of stuck on the bench for a match like this. The Barca Athletic players who, in theory, age-wise, should be pushing into the first team. But the players we didn't see, Marc G, Pau Prim, Danny Rodriguez, and Unai Hernandez, those are all U19 and U18 players. Paul Prim played most of this season with Juvenal B, not even with Juvenal A. So I know people are very excited about him as the pivot of the future, but these players were brought on an away trip in the Liga with the first team just to get a lay of the land. We see this all the time. Xavi is no different. Xavi is not stunting any youth development or anything like that by not playing 17 and 18-year-olds who this season, again, were not making the jump from the U19s like Gabi did, like Ansu Fati did, like Pedri would have, or like Pedri actually did for Las Palmas. No, these are players who played all season long with U18s, really generally the U18s, and then also a few appearances with the U19s. And it was also a reward for them coming back from the U17 Euros. And yeah, they didn't win the whole tournament. They crashed out in the semifinal to France. But along with Lamine Yamal, all of this group had a really promising tournament. Instead, that fifth sub went to Pablo Torre, who had another nice little cameo. Unlike Ansu Fati, who I said I can't imagine coming back, Pablo Torre, I very much can easily see returning to Barcelona in a year's time. Who knows where he's going to go on loan? Likely someplace in Spain, where there is one of the teams in yellow. Just hope it's not Cadiz. But anyway, I think that'll do it for this Liga season. Of course, we're not done here. We've still got to review the Barca Femení win on the next podcast. We've got to break down the season. I got to figure out who is the best of the best, run through all the superlatives, and I think that's going to be a number of different shows. And of course, the transfer stuff is really heating up. If you missed my Messi news video and the update on all that, check that out. That was the most recent one on the channel. And as always, until next time, Forza Barca.